Welcome back. It's still News Hub. Nigeria and China signed a Naira Yuan currency swap deal equivalent deal to the $2.4 billion in May. Data from the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics (NBS) foreign trade report for fourth quarter 2017 shows that China accounted for 22% of imports to Nigeria, with a total worth of 465.13 billion naira, making Nigeria's largest trading partner. To further explain the reality we have on this issue, joining us in our Lagos studio is Taiwo Oyedele, a senior partner at the PricewaterhouseCoopers. And later on, Dr. Vincent Uwani will also join us, and also we will be expecting our guests to join us in Abuja. That's the spokesperson of the CBN, Isaac Okorafor. Welcome to our Lagos studio. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Let's look at this Yuan Naira swap deal. A lot of Nigerians have been asking that, oh, we've been told a lot of things that Nigeria will move away from the perceived dollarized economy, and our Naira will gain some level of ascendancy. What is the real picture of this deal?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think the starting point is to try and understand in context what does it mean for Nigeria to have this deal with China. In terms of our demand for foreign currency, dollars, pound sterling, euro, and so on and so forth, what does it mean? So just to paint a picture, our import in 2017 was somewhere around about $30 billion imports. And the number one country where we imported a lot of things from was China, around about $12 billion. So what happens is, in China, you spend renminbi. In Nigeria, we spend naira. So if you're going to buy something from a supplier in China, so what we did before is you look for a third currency, which is usually the dollars. You give the dollars to the person in China, and they convert it to yuan. So the question is, why don't you just deal with yourself directly, so you don't have to go through looking for dollars? Especially because Nigeria had dollar scarcity. And you know, in the theory of supply and demand, if you don't have sufficient dollars and everybody's looking to buy dollar, then the price will go up, which means naira will devalue. And that's the reason why we got to in fact, at a point, naira got to 520 naira to the dollars in the black markets. So it was a strategy to try and reduce the demand for dollars, so that if you need to deal with renminbi, why don't you deal with that directly? Overall, in the long term, you should help naira to be more stable. I'm not sure it's going to make naira appreciate, but it's going to be stable, which is, I think, is more important than even the naira appreciating. Because once your currency is stable, it allows investors to plan long term. Nobody wants to invest $1 million today, and then in 5 years' time, it's half of that money because naira has lost its value.
Now, there's this fear that Nigeria might actually be facing in the long term with this deal with China. We've had a history of having a lot of China goods in Nigeria, and hence the federal government had a 41 list of items which were banned from being exported. With this trade deal now, do you think it's going to open that window again for China to bring in a lot of stuff into Nigeria, and then the risk of our own manufacturers or our own business entrepreneurs in Nigeria having a very difficult time to sell their own goods?
Yes, I think there are two issues you've raised. The first one is, whatever items were prohibited for the purpose of bidding for FX will not change because of this deal. So all the foreign exchange regulations are still applicable even to this deal. So which means whatever you cannot import before, whether you're importing from China now, you still not be able to get FX from the CBN. Now, but the other important point is, are we not losing focus? You know, if you're making it easier to import from China, is there a risk that you then reduce your effort in trying to get local substitute? Because at the end of the day, ultimately, we need to start producing what we consume. And beyond that, we need to start looking at how can we increase our export to the rest of the world. So China is our largest market for imports, But if you look at the market where we export to, they don't even appear in the top 5. Why are we not exporting to China? So those are the things we need to consider. If you look at it as well, sometimes we focus too much on importation of goods. But there are countries that make billions, if not trillions of dollars from exporting intellectual property and services. So we should start thinking now about, instead of all these things we are buying from China and importing to Nigeria, can't we get China to come to Nigeria and produce in Nigeria? Because the market is here, that's why we're importing from them. Now, when they start producing here, what then happens is you don't even need to look for the yuan or look for dollars anymore, and then they create employment here, and then you can increase the GDP of Nigeria and the economy can grow. I think ultimately, those are the more fundamental policy shifts that I would like government to start thinking about.
If I get you correctly, probably you should be more clear on this. The impression we've always been creating over time is that we are just a consumer nation, we should try and manufacture, we should do stuff. That's the only way, that's their quotation now. That's the only way we can really reduce this big margin between dollar and naira. What are you trying to say? Are you saying that we should de-emphasize that and focus on other services rather than manufacturing, as it were?
Yeah, so I think sometimes our strategy is wrong. Sometimes also because policymakers who are making decisions don't have sufficient understanding. There's not a single country in the world, not China, not the US, that produces everything that they need. So when we're having this conversation in Nigeria where we want to produce everything, in fact, there are laws in Nigeria today, like the Local Content Act, that says we should start manufacturing vessels to drill. When are we going to get there? So what we should do is to look for where is the area of our competitive advantage. That area might just be that we're the guys who can manufacture tires best in the world. We don't need to produce cars, but we can produce tires. If you produce tires for the whole world, it will lift your economy. Find the area where you have the best advantage, whether it's a service, whether it's a product, and do it better than anybody else. So it's not wrong to import. It is wrong to import everything. Now, for you to start being competitive, you must address a lot of issues locally. Energy is a major factor. You can't be generating electricity 24/7 by yourself and be competitive in international markets. You have unbelievable amount of taxes all over the place from local government. When you move and cough like this, they say, come and pay tax. And you also have policy inconsistencies sometimes. Borrowing rate is very high. You go and borrow to produce and you're paying 19%. Who are you going to sell to? I'm not saying these issues will be dealt with or addressed overnight, but we need to have a long-term plan as to how we deal with them one step at a time. The deal with China is good, but it should be only a temporary measure, not something we now conclude and go and relax and say we've solved Nigeria's problem. We'll come back in another 10 years, 5 years, and be talking about something else. Maybe it won't be China anymore, it might be India. So we ultimately have to reduce our imports, focus on where we have advantage, and export to the rest of the world.
Now, Nigeria is not the first country to have this kind of deal with China. I think we're the third African country to have this kind of deal with China. Now, we know that, we also know that that in times past, or at least I stand to be corrected, at the end of 2017, Nigeria's trade with China was running in billions of dollars,
yes,
while their trade with Nigeria was just in millions of dollars, which means that we spent more, in trading with them. Is there going to be, with this trade partnership between both countries, is it going to strengthen the Naira this time around, or will it weaken the Naira?
Yeah, so you're right. The trade between Nigeria and China is not balanced. Yeah, so we import a lot more from them than we export to them, which is some of the points I've been making about let's look for areas where we can also export to them. Will this deal make Naira stronger or weaker? I'll say it's not going to make Naira stronger. It's not going to make Naira weaker. It will make Naira stable. And this is a very important point. Most times, there are people who said that when Buhari was campaigning 3 years ago, they said they're going to make Naira dollar to be 1-to-1. I said, if anybody believed that, they were just being stupid, because it's not going to happen. And by the way, what's important is not whether your currency is strong. Otherwise, the UK economy should be stronger than the US, because the pound sterling is stronger than the US. So that's not what is important. What's important is whether your currency is stable. So the rate between today And the rate of Naira to dollar in another 6 years, 2 years from now should not be significantly different. That is what is important. And I think that the CBN has done well in building Nigeria's reserve and having this kind of deals, because what that means is we have the buffer to defend the Naira such that the rate can be stable. You know, it's been stable now for months, which is good. So it doesn't need to appreciate, but let it not depreciate. Keep it stable. And I think this deal is one of the arsenals to help us achieve that objective.
All right, we'll take a break, Mr. Oyedele. We'll come back to these discussions. We need to, touch base with our guest who will be joining us in the studio just a bit. So we'll take a break, and when we come back, our discussions will begin. Please stay with us.